All right. What's up, everyone? Welcome back here to another episode on the Lure Lab, a part of the Serious Angler Network. As always, I'm your host, the captain, Andrew Full. In today's episode, we are diving into the realms of winter fishing. And as we all know, it's pretty much turning into that time of year of just about everyone up here in the north, unless you seem to live in the Northeast, and it's basically been 60 degrees every day and still warm. I still have my boat out, but I've been so busy trout fishing that I haven't had a chance to go bass fishing in a couple weeks. So I'm hoping I have a free day when the winds align so I can get out here soon. But we have an awesome episode here today. We have Jake Boomer joining us, and we are talking about winter pushing cold fronts. And it seems like when I was talking to him earlier, he's been dealing with this issue for multiple weeks, and it can be an extremely stingy time to get bites. And that's what we're diving into today, is the top baits and techniques to use when you're dealing with these frigid at times conditions as we're rolling into the winter time. So without further ado, let's get Jake on here. Hey Jake, how's it going?
Good, buddy. How are you?
Yeah, bordering on the fringe of burned out and tired, but we're surviving. Yes.
Right on.
So
Right on.
it's been an incredible year, tons of time on the water, and steelhead fishing like in November and December over here is like flat out exhausting because most days I'm walking 4.5 to 10 miles and I'm up at 4 a.m. and I go to bed about midnight. So it's it's that time of year. Today I had an awesome day off as we're recording here. So I'm like, yeah, we're jiving. Like we're just living today.
Yeah, that's a grind, having to walk for fish, Yeah. I have a Suzuki that if I can't get in and chase a fish with the Suzuki, then we're snow skiing or something else. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like schlepping the sides of those creeks is a lot of work, especially you got to wear so much more gear and probably big heavy waders and stuff. Yeah.
Well, I won't lie. I have $1,000 pair of waders that are like, they weigh probably less than my pack of gear. They don't weigh much, and they're boot foot, and then slip some like nice inserts in there, so they're real comfortable when I walk. So I don't complain too much.
What do you give your clients? That's the question.
They have to supply their own waders most of the time. I do have one pair that I can rent out that's a size large with an 11 boot, but most people don't fit in them. They're either too small or too big. So like, yeah, it's interesting.
You get anybody that shows up in like their duck hunting waders, like their 6 mil that barely move? Oh yeah. About mile one, they want to die.
Oh yeah. I pick and choose my battles. When I have those guys, we tend to sit in the hole and then get back in the car and drive to the next spot.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So we cater every day to whoever the individual is with us. So it's a good time. But that's not what we're talking about. We are talking about bass fishing today. It's my own fault, right? And we're diving into quite a few baits here that are proven fish catchers during this weird stingy time. Like fall transitions, when you go hot to cold, are awesome, but I feel like when you go cold to colder in the winter, especially on the backside of that front, it gets really stingy and hard to catch these fish. So that's why I wanted to bring you on here, because I know you guys have been facing all kinds of fronts out there in the Pacific Northwest, and guess I'll let you lead it off with bait number one, right? Like, so what is Jake Boomer going to throw, like his total confidence this time of year to hopefully get a bite?
All right. So, and let me preface this with the fact that we fish all the way to Thanksgiving before things like lock up with ice and things like that. And there's a tournament we call the Hope Open that we just had a couple weeks ago. And I actually had to fish that one with Polnick. And when we launched, it was 18 degrees. So that's cold, right? So is that your cold front? Yeah, that's cold, right? We'll call that the cold front. So if number one bait that I would use in a cold front, and I'll preface this again with preface number 2, cold fronts in the winter aren't always bad. Cold fronts like in the spring are just shut them down. You're not going to get a bite. But sometimes cold fronts in the winter, they're still kind of feeding up, I feel like, before that water really gets down in there and really gets cold. They're still eating as much as they can in that 50 to probably 42 degrees. They eat really good. They just get hard to see on the live scope, and you kind of got to, they move, right? They move quickly. And so my number one bait when you're looking for them and it's a cold front in winter is going to be a blade bait. Can you see this one?
Oh,
this is my favorite one, and it's made locally by Norasada. So it's a Norasada blade bait. What I like about it is this is a 5/8, so it gets down quick because generally you're looking in deeper water and you're moving it a lot because you're kind of looking for the fish. And the one thing about a like winter and cold front, especially with smallmouth, is they don't come off the bottom very much. They're hard to see with the scope. Mm-hmm. So you might get an area that you really think that you want, you think they should be there, or maybe you saw one kind of rise up. This allows you to cover a little bit of water with it. And
now you're casting it out and hopping it back.
Yes, throw it a long ways. You're covering ground with it. We accidentally created the 76er, which is one of our rods, which is a 7.5 foot spinning rod, because we made a blade bait rod. That's actually one of the first versions of that rod that came out. So, 10-pound test braid with like a 10-pound test leader, throw it out in, 20 to 30 feet and walk it back. The guys that are really good at it don't rip it off the bottom hard.
Yeah,
it's just kind of a pull.
As soon as you feel that vibration, right, on the semi-slack line, you kill it and let it go back.
Right. So if you guys are watching this video, this is the Norasada, and it has a lot of vibration. Second one would be Cabela's brand is a really good one. It's a really good blade bait. Yeah, it's the
I know
one
actually that's quite a few people here who like the Cabela's one.
Yeah, I would show you one, but I lost them all. They do get hung up a lot. Norasada is I always start with the Norasada because it vibrates a lot more, and if I'm using that, I'm looking for fish. But anyways, and I want to have a one. I have actually 4 baits here, but I want to have a 1B, and I got permission to talk about it. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine. Go 1B.
Okay, so my number one bait is always going to be metal because I'm covering ground. If I'm looking for them, right? Generally, they're not going to move around a lot. 1B is going to be, if you're going to go metal, it's kind of hard to show this bait, but what do you want to call this? The peanut, the underspin.
Yeah,
it's a
like a tailspin, right?
It's a tailspin. This is a Molex, right? Can you see that?
Yeah.
It's hard to show it. Yeah. Heavy, 3/4 ounce. It also does the same thing as a blade bait. Get it to the bottom, lure, reel it really slow. If they're lethargic, they'll come up and get it. I generally don't do much with it. It's it's been really good the last couple of years. You can run it down banks and stuff like that. Where we struggle with it is a lot of times with that cold front, those fish move off of any kind of flat and go to something vertical. Generally vertical where I'm from means rock, riprap. Means you're going to lose some baits.
You're going to lose everything. But you can also catch them. So you got to risk it for the biscuit, right? Like
that's right.
If you're not fishing where you're going to get hung up, you're probably not getting bit most days. So
yep. The word is coddy. It's coddy when you're hung up all the time. She's coddy down there. You know what I mean? Yeah. Which is a way of not using a curse word when you're talking about how frustrated you are because you're breaking off all your metal. And another thing about those types of baits is generally in that transition when those fish pull off of the flat or whatever they were on before it got really cold and go to something vertical, it's hard to see them, one, because they're close to the bottom. And you scopers, you guys like me that I'm trying to be a better scoper, it's really hard to scope anything greater than 45 degrees. It's easier to get at it at a perpendicular manner, right? Mm-hmm. So that you can actually get that separation. But if you try to go down a break with a live scope, you get all the interference because it's such a steep break and it's hard to see the fish in there anyway. So those baits are really good for going down those types of scenarios, working it down. You are going to get hung up.
Now with the tailspin, I have a question for you with the tailspin. Have you ever casted it out and kind of fished it like a blade bait on the real subtle hops and kill it for like 20, 30 seconds on the bottom and just lift it and do it again?
I've never been the guy that killed it, but I know guys that do. They'll leave it on the bottom and shake it. Yeah. And generally that's in a sand scenario. Like if you get some of the Southern Idaho guys tell me that when they start to move up and use the sand, usually like in early spring, they'll just leave it on the bottom and they're trying to just get it to flop back and forth or not.
That's when I get them to bite it. That's why I was asking to see if there's any crossover. I catch quite a few fish on a tailspin early, like 35 to 40 degree water, casting it out and dropping it on them, because like you can see them show themselves on scope sometimes. If you drop it on them, you leave it there and you just literally lift it up until you feel it just come out the bottom and you kill it again. You'll watch the fish move with it on your scope, and all of a sudden you just go to lift up and it's heavy. You never feel them bite it, it's just there.
It's just heavy.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll show you another 1B bait, and this is
It's
this
a
is
1C.
This is it's the same one. This is another see if that'll show
Well,
up
that one's
right.
interesting. Is the blade down, or is it just
No, it's just because I'm holding it off of that. Let's see
Got
if
it.
I can do it better.
Got it.
This is made by a local company, Descent Weights. He's probably going to be really mad that I showed this because this is kind of one of our secrets, but he calls it the peanut. It does really, really well. It just seems to do really well when it's really cold. I don't know if the difference of that, not really sure. I like the damiki, whatever they call this. I actually have the box for that. They call it the Trago.
Yeah, the Trago's pretty good.
Yeah. So that's my 1A and B. How's that?
I like that. So, yeah, those are good options. I love the blade bait and the tailspin this time of year when it starts to get cold, because they just get bit until the water gets too cold, which is like sub 40, right? So I guess we'll move on to bait number 2. What is bait number 2 that you would use for these fun conditions in the leading into the winter?
So this is a new this is kind of a new one for me. And my face is all red because I went fishing today.
How cold is it out there?
It was cold. It was supposed to get to 45. It never got over 35. I don't think it was so cold. That's why my face is all red. I had to take a 100-degree shower. Oh, so stinking cold. This is a good one once you find them, or if you know where they're at. I've kind of wanted to get better at this, but bait number 2 is a jig, and it's a little bit goofier than your. I'm sure you know.
Man, you're exposing all kinds of stuff right now.
and I almost didn't, but Table Rock what was it? The MLF Toyota Championship. Yeah. Chad, I think it's Mazurk, how you say his name. He just won the tournament on a little tungsten compact 1/2 ounce, 7/16 ounce jig with a Ned rig on it. I don't know why that's a deal. The very first time I ever heard about it, I was getting my butt kicked in an FLW championship, like the one that got won on Cumberland. And Brian Thrift weighed like 27 pounds of smallmouth with this little jig. So this isn't the one I threw today. I actually brought the one I threw today, or the bag, because I lost them. But this one, I think it's just this is a 5/16. The one that I've had the best luck is this one. And so this is a Kitech Model 2 1/2 ounce. So
have you ever had any issues with those Gami hooks in there?
So the Model 2 has a different hook than the original.
Yeah, I know.
Did you know that?
Yeah, and I still break them. That's the reason why I'm asking.
Well, I'm not as strong as you, Andy. So,
no,
that's the one I was running. I did not break any today. I broke them off.
No, those Kitech jigs are absolutely fantastic, right? But I do challenge you to, like, we're not affiliated with them at all, but the Beast Coast makes a really good open water tungsten football jig. It has a way better hook.
Gotcha. Okay. So a tiny little head like that, right? With a
tiny little head. I don't know if I had them here, I would grab them real fast, but they're in my boat. And I'll send you a picture. I have a picture of one on my phone. They're good.
So
they were designed for open water smallmouth fishing.
Right. And they got a good hook keeper, because this is the problem. Have you guys ever tried to use this stupid so I brought that to show that I emptied the bag because I caught him good on it today. Canadian craw, though, was the color. It doesn't really, I don't think it matters, but buoyancy does.
Mm-hmm.
I think that it has to stand up. I think that it can't have a lot of movement, so kicking legs don't seem to do as good. But whatever you want to call that, the Ned head. It's been around for a while, the Ned jig or whatever.
Have you tried the new Yamamoto Ned worm, the one that floats, like the 3-inch floating Ned?
So, because we're being honest on this show, that's what I did today, was compare the two. This E-Man was better. I'm not sponsored by either one of them. I'm just saying that it seemed to me that I got more
like
bites with that Z-Man, and I hate it because you can't get it over the.
It's
You know
such
what I mean?
a
It's, your hands are cold, and you're trying to get that little Z-Man bait on there.
Yep.
But if you get it threaded on there, you can catch 4 or 5 fish on it, and it's not going anywhere.
I'm trying to remember if I used the Z-Man. I believe I have thrown the Z-Man on that Beast Coast one. Let me see if Omnia has them on here so we can see the hold on, open water.
The hook keeper type?
Yeah, let's see if it's on here. Open water sniper.
I will say too that I cut about, and you probably do this too, I cut about a half an inch off of the little normal turd.
Yeah.
So it doesn't stick out too far, and that'll give you a better fall rate too.
Absolutely. So let me share my screen here because I have it pulled up. Okay. Can you see that?
Yeah.
So the keeper there, so you have 3/8 and ½ ounce. The keeper there, it's instead of being one tag up in the middle, it's off to the side. So when you pull and like when you fold the silicone and you drape it down, you can actually pull and snap that Z-Man over, and it's got dual flanges to lock on the outside as opposed to on top or on the bottom like the Kitech.
There's no weed guard on that, huh?
No. Huh. No weed guard.
That would be the only issue for what I was on Coeur d'Alene today, and they seem to still be on wood or around wood if the wood's around the rock. So I would just say, but I also don't think that this hook keeper or this weed guard on the Kitech is very good either, though.
So they have. Hold on. They also have another one that has a weed guard. So give me a second.
Oh, do they?
Yeah, this one.
Yeah, that's for real. I like that.
And the 7/16 and 5/8. So, yeah, food for thought.
Yeah,
but that's good. A bad little jig. I actually stopped using Kitech jigs when I found the Beast Coast one because I felt like the hook was better. I didn't flex it out ever, and I just like the colors and the hook keeper on it. So.
Yeah, there's not a lot of hook to this either. You're right when you look at this. So I threw it on I don't know if you have one of our clutches, but it's a 7.5 foot medium on 10-pound test. I don't think you need to do that. I lost a lot of them, trying to get them out of the rocks.
I throw mine on 15 or 17 and just hit them as hard as I can in 35 foot of water on rock. And it never, because then if you nick the 17-pound test, you can still bow flip them. So like you start getting.
So I took the finesse route, Andy, and and it cost me about $30.
Yeah, maybe you should up that line size just a little bit. It's fluorocarbon. So. Here's my take on fluorocarbon. You can completely correct me if I'm wrong. On a jig, I think it doesn't matter. When it comes to a drop shot, it matters, right? I've caught them throwing it on 20-pound tests in a flipping stick with that Kitech jig, and had them bite it just as good as if it had 12-pound test. The only difference is your rate of fall. The 20-pound test is going to take longer for it to fall. But with that little Ned trailer on there and you trim down the skirt and you trim down the trailer a little bit, that baby's sinking like a rock because there's no resistance.
Mm-hmm.
So
I wanted to show you guys. I got this out too. This is a new color from Norris Auto Blades that was freaking awesome this year.
Ooh, yeah, foiled up. I like the orange. Yeah. The orange, you need orange in a perch pattern. I can't stand it when companies paint perch patterns and they go yellow belly. I'm like, where's the orange?
Where's the orange? Our perch up here in the Northwest have a white belly, but I think the flash of this is good. But like a lot of the perch colors in our baits, you'll see guys that'll go through them. We like to have our perch are more white than like the rest of the country. They have more of a yellow. So the Ned Secret is a big one. That's a really good one though.
Have you ever tried throwing like a little tiny swim bait on the back of it, like a 2.8 or a 3.3?
And I haven't, and I'll tell you why. The reason I like the Ned thing is because I don't like it. I think you're going away from movement, from the kicking. So that's the way my brain works, right?
So, and here's I've tried it like in not like a fish tank, but in like shallow water. When you go with like a Kitech swing impact, not a fat swing impact, but the swing impact, it's so thin that every time you hit a rock and it pulls like vertical, that tail just sways back and left and right. That's the only reason why I like it. Like if the water's a little bit warmer, so say like high 40s, low 50s, I do like a swim bait on the back of it for whatever reason, because you're dragging it, but when you drag it, it's a secondary action as to where you're probably getting a lot of your bites with the Ned rig when you're just sitting there and holding it in place. Because
that's why I did that too. And I didn't want to go into forward imaging stuff yet, but I did that too because I feel like that tournament, the table lock tournament, it got won scoping. Like he was throwing at trees and stuff with that deal. I wanted something that stood up right when it sat there and you just shake it. Mm-hmm. So anyways, but I get it. If you're dragging it and you want a little motion, here's a good question that I had, and I thought about it today. At what water temp do you want to kind of settle that motion down? Like under 50, you start getting away from kicky legs. And I mean, that's like, I don't have a math to that, and I don't think you should, but I thought about it today is like, if I was going to drag this thing around, at what point the water temp matters? What point do you think it matters?
I think you have to let the fish tell you, because I've caught them in 42-degree water on that football jig with a rage chunk on it, like the most erratic chunk that you can put on it. And then there's other days that they will only eat it when you dead stick it with a Ned rig. And I think it's all frontal condition based. If those fish are active in their feeding, I don't think they care so much. But if they're very stagnant and you have to hold it there and wait for 5 minutes for them to come over and bite it, then you want to go no action.
So I agree with you. That's why, if for the sake of this show, if you get that cold front, that 18 degrees, I want it to look just like that. And just, smallmouth especially, they stare at it, right? They're just, and then Sammy's eyes roll back in his head and he just can't stand it anymore. And 2 minutes later, while you're getting out another hand warmer, he eats it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So exactly. You set the rod down for a half a second, you come back and you pick it up, you're like, oh, he's got it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's never like that either. It's always like you set it down, you get a hand warmer, you don't think you're going to get a bite. He didn't eat it when it was falling or when you dragged it, but you set it down. But then all of a sudden he's dragging the rod off the boat. You know what I mean? You're like, where'd all the energy come from? Why didn't you just eat it on the fall? You know what I mean? Like, something like that.
Because he picked it up, he's like, oh, it's a free crayfish. I better swim away with this now before someone else sees it. Yeah, smallmouth.
And your clutch goes over the side with your brand new Corrado. Yeah,
that happened to you, didn't it?
It has happened to me, yes. But I say that it had to have been like a 5 or 6 pound smallmouth. A lot of my buddies are like, no, your bait got hung up and the boat drifted off and off goes your.
That could have happened too if there's a lot of rock before spot lock.
Yeah, but I like the story that it was a really big one. I'm sure it was a big one. It had nothing to do with. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, probably would have won the tournament. You know what I mean?
Oh, geez, and in a tournament, that's like, and this is a complete rabbit hole right now. Like, I feel like if something goes wrong in the first hour of the tournament, if you can bounce back from it, usually that's like one of your best days, especially if it's like 2 or 3 things. You just got to know how to rebound through it. Like, I look at it as like, if I got 3 hours of practice before a Wednesday night tournament and it's absolute dog doo-doo, like bad, I'm like, I'm probably going to win this tournament because I'm going to do something I didn't do in practice. And sure enough, it's happened like 3 times where I finished in the top 3 and I didn't have a bite in practice.
Yeah.
So
It's like, that's 100%. I just had this conversation with the Polikanic.
Yeah.
Because I'm a junkie, right? I'm a tournament junkie. I've done 5 tournaments in 6 weeks, and I'm
all
jumping
cold
into
weather.
them. All cold weather. One of them we started in 18 degrees, and the one that I thought I was going to really knock the doors off of them was my worst finish. The one that I'm like, man, I didn't catch a decent fish. I think that's part of fishing, but I also think that you can kind of start figuring out the way your decision paths work when you really have a lot of confidence, because you get to about 1 or 2 o'clock and you're like, man, I don't know nothing. You know what I mean? Maybe you're not as open-minded. You're more confident, but not open-minded. So
you're chasing your head, but not following your gut. because your head's telling you you're doing the right thing, but your gut's like, dude, you should probably slide out or go up shallower or go to the other end of the lake. And you're like, shut up, gut. Like,
Yeah.
I know what I'm doing.
If you don't want to call it your gut, call it your Rapala scale. When your Rapala scale says that you have 8 pounds at 1 o'clock.
When your Rapala scale says you suck, you probably suck.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
And that's the best part about fishing. It'll humble everyone really fast.
For real.
So it's very equal grounds for the most part.
For real.
So
you ready for bait number 3?
Yeah, hit me with bait number 3 here.
This is when all of your listeners are going to like totally disregard me, never want to listen to anything that El Perez says.
Oh, no.
I know it's bad.
Oh, no.
But it's the ball and chain.
Nobody's going to disregard you on that one.
Well, so here and before you click off turn off the download and quit listening to the podcast, there's a couple things that are happening in fishing, especially in tournament fishing, but the forward imaging, the live scope, it's having an effect. I don't care what anybody says. It's having an effect on the way they bite. Cold fronts make them even more ornery. Cold water. I feel like cold water makes the sound. Cold water is, if you ever notice in cold water, there's a lot less in the water. You don't have as much debris. When you're looking with your live scope, it's just crystal clear. I feel like the sounds you make they're more crisp. Anyways, I feel like, and I can prove this in a tournament, you almost have to clear the spot you're fishing, get away from the boat to get those negative cold weather, cold front fish to actually react to a bait. And me and Brandon were in a tournament, and he's a complete live scope hog. Like, he's not even that big, but I couldn't even see around him. Like, couldn't see the graphs. So I brought, but I knew to grab a Carolina rig, and we would go through an area and maybe get a bite or see one or two. But if you just kind of drug that along real slow, you kind of get the same action that we're talking about with the stop and go, where they get to think about it a little bit. It just picked up, and a lot of the bites you never felt. Yeah. It's just heavy. You know what I mean? But it was a great, I won a tournament a couple years ago with my normal team partner, Bryson. And we had a cold front come in the night before day 2 happened, and he cleaned my clock from the back of the boat, dragging a Carolina rig. It's just that they're down. Generally, they're low. Like I said, you're not going to see them as good on forward-facing imaging. And God, he just crushed it. And this bait, I almost hate to give it up. Like, I hope. Is there any way you can not show this show to regional people from the Northwest?
I mean, I don't know what our demographic is throughout the state, so hopefully I don't see it. But my question is, you go to a TRD, right, on the back of a football jig. Have you ever tried putting like a big turd or a 4-inch Senko on the Carolina rig to mute out as much action as possible as you're dragging it through?
So here's my thought on that. Yes, I have. There's a transition that happens when water starts to decline up here in the West, or in my experience in fishing, where they don't eat like the bait fish. It's like they quit eating a drop shot at some point, and they start to eat the Ned rig and you know what I mean? They start to look at the bottom.
They stop feeding up. They start feeding down.
Exactly. That transition has happened here. It happened to me in a tournament. But they look down, but the blade bait still works, right? And then the stop still works, right? In cold water. I think that those slender Carolina rig baits don't work as good in really cold water because they're going away from maybe that bait fish profile and going more to a crawfish profile. I don't know why I can't talk. And so with this bait, it'll kind of do that. It'll kick as you pull it, but it just glides down. And I think that it's your crawfish. It's kind of neutral. It could lay on the bottom if Sammy's being a knucklehead and doesn't want to eat it. That's my thought on it. I don't know if you put a like a fluke on there. Flukes work really good up here in the summer. That's what you Carolina rig. That's what everybody has. They have some kind of the D shad from Yamamoto is a great Carolina rig bait. As it gets colder, I like to use something like this. But what I think I like about this bait the most is the flat profile. And I think it has a little glide to it. And when we use it normally, when I Carolina rig this bait in the summer or any other time, I use a super line hook. This is the only time of year that I'll use just a normal wire hook because I really want it to not go to the bottom quick. I want it to kind of look around. Does that make sense?
Yep. You want to slow it up.
Yes, exactly. But I don't say, it's hard to say you don't want motion in cold water because the blade bait gets their attention, but they very rarely eat it when you pull up.
Yeah.
Exactly. So that's I could be completely off base, but who knows?
Oh, one of my favorite things to do, like with scope, right, is throw the blade bait out there 80 foot from the boat. And when you hit it direct on, because you lift and you'll see the smallmouth literally chase the blade bait behind it. And they'll chase it all the way to the boat. And if you kill it for a half a second, you go to rip again and they're there. It's like, you stupid fish. Why didn't you just eat it when I was ripping it?
That Chad Missouri guy, and I've heard this 4 or 5 times, and this one will really confuse you. I've heard, because I studied tournament wins, but he said that if he'd throw at a target if he could get the fish to come all the way under the boat. So the most noise, whatever it was, he always got him to bite if they could come under the boat. Now figure that one out. Like, he won't bite when the noise is the least, the boat presence is the farthest away. But if you can get them under the boat, they'll bite. Do you ever notice that with a blade bait?
Yes, I have.
Yeah,
me too. I like 90% of the time on Erie, I don't even cast a blade bait. I just, as I'm drifting, I keep it very vertical, and I catch almost every fish right underneath the boat.
It's crazy. Can I have a bait number 4? Since you said that we were going to talk about the difference of cold weather fronts with before and after.
Yeah. You can do 4. You can do 5 if you want. Like, do 2.
This is
2 must-have honorable mentions.
This is an honorable mention because today I had a blast with it. We did have a cold front today. And it's this one. Can you see that? I actually grabbed this. I grabbed this off the deck of the boat coming in here after fishing today. This is an honorable mention only because I think that with the scope lifestyle, the way we're
Yamamoto scope shad.
Yes, it's the first time I've ever used it. This is obviously a really small head. If I threw a bigger one, they didn't need it. I think that scoping with what we're talking about with the cold weather and the cold front, you have to be able to, you can't just look for fish. If you fish for the ones you can see, you won't see 90% of what they suck to the bottom. And so, but this little bait sure did really well on a slow fall or whatever it was. If you're not into scoping, if you're watching this and you're like, scoping's dumb, obviously don't use it. Right. But I think that the world has embraced the live scope or whatever, the forward imaging, and that's a bait that I would use if I was in an environment where I felt like I could see a few of them, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's kind of cool, like how many fish damikiing or mid-strolling or tight lining, how many fish will actually rise in an area just to check it out because they're like, oh, what is that? Like, they don't eat it all the time, but you can really make fish show when they're real dead on the bottom if you can get it down and hang it above their head. Yep. Especially if it's close enough and they feel like reacting to it. So
I'll give you an example or scenario too, because that tournament, one of the tournaments I did this year, and it's one of the ones I did poorly. Brandon Polinick teamed up with Carl Jakobsen for our big local fall open. And Carl told me he knew that he'd never get to see the scope. So he just grabbed a damiki, it was cold weather, and he just open fished it, like just bombed it out there and worked it back real slow. He made sure he was close to the bottom. And he said he got as many bites as Brandon, and Brandon was the one that could see all the scope. And he's like, I knew I was never going to get to see the scope, so I was just trying to be productive. But I think a lot of what you're talking about, we never see him. We go right over him, and he was using the same kind of retrieve, but he was catching them. Wow. So
that's actually awesome. Impressive too.
Well, and I don't think it sounds like that much fun to throw an 1/8 ounce damiki rig in 20 feet of water, wait for it to go to the bottom, and then fish it slow on the bottom. That's miserable. The only reason it's fun is with the live scope because you actually see things coming at it. Yeah. But Carl's such a he's such a stud fisherman. He's like, I knew that if I did this, I was going to get a couple bites. And Brandon said they were about equal. So
that's just impressive. That's all I'm going to say about that. So,
yeah.
Do you have a fifth one by any chance, or is that
I
it?
don't. I'm done. I'm sorry.
Tapped out.
I'm glad you asked me for this to do this one, because this is actually when I get to do the most fishing. The company Alpha slows down a little bit this time of year. Fall is when I get to just dive in, and like I said, I'm a junkie. Fish everyone I can.
Yeah, you get to fish a little bit, and probably sports and stuff have pretty much died down until winter sports too for it, like the kids and stuff, right?
Yeah, next week basketball starts. Yep.
Yeah. Yep, you're done for a couple months. I'll see you in March.
Yep. That's raising kids, buddy.
Yeah.
You'll be there.
Yeah, I think we're going to get our oldest one possibly in the ski club this year. So we'll see. That's good. Yeah.
My rule is, if you want to bass fish, don't let your kids play soccer. Just don't do it. The soccer schedules are so rough.
Yeah, lucky for me, I get to bass fish every day in the summertime all year because it's my job, right? Like, unfortunately, it's part of your job too, but a lot of times you have to be designing rods and selling rods. I take people fishing, so I don't think soccer will quite get in the way. And if there is a tournament, I'll just schedule around it. So if one of my daughters wants to play soccer, but that's neither here or there. Thank you for joining me, Jake. I appreciate it.
Anytime.
You're always welcome here or the main show or Business from the Bass Boat. We enjoy having you on, and we enjoy picking your brain. So, because we know you get all the insider secrets. Yeah, it's probably frozen right now. So,
yeah.
So absolutely. Go eat some dinner, and we'll chat soon. And have a good day, buddy.
Yeah. Thank you, Andrew.
Of course. We'll talk soon. All right, everyone. Well, thanks for tuning in to this week's episode here in the Lure Lab, where we talked about some killer techniques that you can use during this fun, cold, frigid, can be really tough time of year on a lot of anglers. And I hope you can take some of these tips and techniques and baits and put them to use and put more bass in the boat when you're out fishing from the bank, or if you're in your kayak or on your boat. We appreciate everyone who tunes in. If you're on YouTube and you're new here, hit that subscribe button and maybe leave a comment down below. If you're listening on MP3 on your favorite podcast platform, please leave a review. It allows this podcast to be seen by more people who love bass fishing and want to learn more about techniques and baits and lures and how to catch more bass, because that's what we're here for. But until next week, we will see you then.